I'm thrilled for today's guest. I met her fairly recently. We always say that our content is driven by our clients, and we have a client who found her and highly recommended her. She is also the creator, producer of Erasing Family, and there she is. Let me see if I could get her on. Her name is Ginger. Whoop. Let me try it again. And I'm so excited to be talking to her because she can offer so much to people, but especially because with our audience, a lot of our clients' children are under 18 and are still covered within the court, the court's jurisdiction. But Ginger works with people who have kids of all ages, but especially those who are not under the legal jurisdiction of the courts. A lot of people feel like there's no hope when your kids turn 18, at least in America. And so, Ginger, you are going to talk to us today about reversing parental alienation when it feels like there's no hope. But before you even introduce yourself, let's say that this has happened, that there is a parent who's been rejected and the child is an adult. So let's say they're 18 or older, they're out of that jurisdiction of the court. Would you think, like the first most strategic step to starting to open that door again to reconnection?
Well, thank you for having me on here. And so I've been doing this for a few years. And I first want to say is that we often see miraculous reversals in cases like this. And so far our record, but we've hit this record a few times, has been 12 years no contact with adult children. That means no access to email, no access to cell phone number, not knowing where their kid is. And what will happen is the child will reach out to the parent. So the first step when this is where people will say that's impossible. And it's like, yes, it's impossible because you don't have a plan to make that happen. But it's so much easier, whether the kid's over 18 or under 18, that the child is the one who initiates the reconnection. So instead of saying, how do I reach out? That's the last step that we work with parents on. The first step is releasing the trauma response, because when you show up traumatized, your child, your ex, anyone else, step parents, courts, officials, whoever you're dealing with, can easily push you off. And then they have proof that you're angry, that you're upset, that you're hysterical, that you cry, that you run away, whatever that proof is. And they know what buttons to push. And your child has been raised by an alienator too. So the first step is making sure that no matter what your child or anyone else says, you can respond with calm, you can respond with love, and you do not fear making a mistake. And until you are sure of that, if you have no contact, and this is different for kids under 18 where there is contact and you do have to respond, you should not reach out.
Wow, that is such amazing advice, and it makes so much sense, especially considering that it's the child's perspective. It's not you, what you want. And I'm so glad, Ginger, I learned the other day, like you and I are in alignment with a lot of the things that we teach as well. So before we get into more, why don't we pause and now let you officially introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about the Erasing Family documentary, which is incredible. And I'm recommending it to like every new person that we meet.
Amazing. So my name is Ginger Gentile, and I am the director of the Erasing Family documentary, the second documentary I directed about the impact that divorce has on kids. And this documentary, Erasing Family, it's free to watch on YouTube, is from the child's perspective. And that's because I'm a kid who went through this. And it shows not just how kids are leading the path forward to heal their families, to not repeat this generational trauma, but that also for kids, alienation is very gray. So what we often see with parents who are going through this, they'll say, I did nothing wrong. I'm like, what are you, Jesus? Everyone does stuff that's wrong. I did my best. And as a kid, I say, well, your best wasn't good enough. Oh, I suffered so much. Who cares? I suffered and I'm the kid. So what I learned from making the Erasing Family documentary, and I was a filmmaker for about 15 years at that point, I made 4 documentaries. I worked in Hollywood. I worked all over the world. I had a film production company. I never thought this would be what I'm doing with. And after I made the Erasing Family documentary, so many parents came to me asking for help in reuniting with their cases. And that's when I began to shift to do coaching and consulting full time. And now I have a team of coaches that works with me as well. And we're reuniting families. And so far, we've had 180 success stories. But it goes back to the movie, because in the movie, what I discovered was that the people who reunited, the parents reunited with their kids, all followed the same steps in the same order. Now, for each parent, the length of time they need for each step could be anywhere from as little as an hour. So the quickest I've reunited a parent has been we talked at 2 and he reunited with his daughter at 7 p.m. That's the quickest.
Wow.
And for a lot of parents who their kids are adults and it's been, longer time, the time frame is probably closer to a few months to 6, 7 months. So often they'll after we finish working together. But they always follow the same steps. And the biggest mistake parents make is, how do I get a message to my child? And that can come off in some cases, not all, as stalking, as not respecting a boundary. So you need to become the magnet that draws the kid back. And there is so much preparation that goes into this. We're not talking about preparing forever. This is where people get scared.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about following consistent steps, not waiting, not fighting, but actively preparing.
Mm-hmm.
So many parents are caught up in a dichotomy of, should I fight and go to court and do all this, or should I do nothing and wait for the kids to come back? And we're like, well, there is also a third way. And I'm not saying do or do not go to court. In some cases, you have to go to court, or it's the best solution and it's the best thing you can do. But if you're going to go to court, you should win. What you focus helping people on, right? But if you
Mm-hmm.
know that you can't win, if you know that you don't want to spend any more money, if you know you've been in court for years and years and years, or the kids have aged out, it's not giving up. It's finding a new way to reach out, a new way to be there and to be a magnet. And this is what people find so surprising. They're like, how can my kid reach out if they don't have my phone number?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, first of all, kids today are like spies when it comes to internet. Um, they're following you on social media. They have fake accounts. And I know this because they follow their teachers. Why? They want to see if their teachers have OnlyFans accounts. I'm not making this up. So all children under the age of like 30 have multiple fake accounts to spy on their bosses, on their teachers, on their coworkers. Even though they're not on Facebook, because kids are on Facebook, they have a Facebook account to spy on their teachers. They are spying on you. And most parents are wasting this opportunity on social media. That they could be using as an outreach. But if you hide your child in your body, or you're a dad, your child is connected to you forever. That connection is super strong, and there's so much science behind this that, of course, if you do the work, of course, if you show up differently, they are going to feel that.
It makes so much sense. But then, with the people that we work with, probably a lot of your people are the same as ours, in that it was a divorce or some kind of rupture in the parental relationship that created all this conflict, that a child that's been alienated has heard a narrative for a long time that's sort of an us versus them, like, your father or your mother abandoned us. So that's become so deeply ingrained. Like, how would a rejected parent even begin to deal with something like this without becoming defensive? I'm talking about before you even have contact, but also after you have contact.
Well, that's a great question. I use those words about my dad. You abandon us, right? So that really resonates, that question. I always tell parents that you have to show up so different that within 5 seconds, they see you're not who they were told you were. We don't get many second chances, and that's what's hard, and that's why we should delay outreach until we're truly, truly ready, because you have to show up as a new person, not what the accusation said, but also correcting any mistakes that you have made. So a common one that I see is parents will say, "Oh yeah, well my kid didn't like my drinking and I have a few glasses of wine a week." I'm like, "You got to be alcohol. You got to be sober for a while."
Mm.
That's just one small example, but we can't leave any room for the child to think that things are the same. And one of the first cases that I worked on, which is very close to my heart because it was a good friend of mine, he reunited with his daughter. He was accused of kidnapping his daughter. He actually went to jail for kidnapping. And it was in the news.
Mm-hmm. Oh
So
boy.
what's the mom's narrative? And after they had reunited, after she even began living in his house, after she had met the whole family, he goes, "What do you think about me?" And she goes, "You're a kidnapper." He goes, "Okay, well, if you ever want my perspective on that, I'm here." And she goes, "No, I don't." But they have a relationship.
Hmm.
We focus so much on the truth, and when we defend ourselves, we come off as guilty, but also then it just pushes a person more into their corner. And the more we realize that, sorry, a bird just like crashed into my window. It was like crashed. I was like there. So sorry about that. That's why I screamed. It was like coming in hot, and then it flew away.
That's
Um,
okay. That's okay. That's the first
um,
time that's ever happened in hundreds of interviews,
First
but
time
it's
this
okay.
happened. Yeah. I hope it doesn't happen again. Poor bird. But we're so focused on kids knowing the truth, and you know, the moment you say the truth doesn't matter, right? Like I was
Mm.
just talking with a mom today, and she was like, "Oh, my co-parent says I don't know who to believe because your stories are so different." And I was like, "What are they? The truth arbiter?"
Mm.
I'm like, "It doesn't matter." And the moment you detach from that, um, there's no place for the child to be angry with you. That so if we want to make this more practical, instead of making statements, we ask questions.
This is what we
So
say
when
all
we're
the time too.
yeah,
It's harder to
so when
attack questions, right?
you can't attack a question. So if your child says, so a lot of parents will say, "Well, how should I reach out to my child?" I said, if you have some contact, because most parents, this is also the thing I've learned doing this. Some parents are truly no contact, and it's really been no contact for 10 years, 12 years.
Mhm.
Most have some contact. Whether it's a text message that's read but not responded to, or a request for money, or I see them once a year for a few minutes, there's usually some contact. Ask, "Hey, I'm your parent. I, of course, would love to be more involved. I know that you might not like that. What are some ways I can stay in touch with you that you would like?"
Love it.
They will give you something. They might not, but that's a lot better than saying, "I really would like if we could talk on the phone an hour every month,"
Hmm.
which sounds like a demand.
Yeah, yeah, it makes so much sense.
Mhm.
So I mean, already, Ginger, I'm like, there's so much we could be talking about. This could go on for hours, but of course, neither of us has time for that. So, what about when we know that a lot of times when the dynamic in these families is even when a child gets older, they're often reliant on an alienating parent for money or emotional reliance. Like often the other parent's authority has been minimized, and so that child has developed this mindset that this is my main parent. I can't even make decisions for myself. There's like a learned helplessness in a way, even as they get older, and we see it in some adults. Uh,
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? Like when I'm up against a child that already has been brainwashed and believes that they can't, if they even talk to me, they're going to lose the other side, paying for their car, paying for their college, um, or cutting them off.
Right. So when I work with moms who were often the primary parent, often a stay-at-home parent, um, I will tell them they need to get their financial life back in order. That we need to be able to provide what our kids need, at least in an emergency situation. Like if your kid says, hey, I need $500 for gas money, dad kicked me out of the house, which can often happen. These alienators can switch kids out of the house to be able to
Mm-hmm.
give them $500 for gas money. You need to be able to go visit and see them.
Mm-hmm.
So what we need to make sure that your whole life is in order, then focusing on their relationship, focus on encouraging and blessing your child to be an adult. So often with young men, especially, this language might be, as a young man, I'm sure you can figure that out on your own. As a young man, I look forward to celebrating your success and doing X, Y, Z. So we subtly encourage that they are an adult, that we respect them for being an adult, and we know that they will make a good decision. Now, what's the trap parents fall into? Especially moms. Oh, but I don't like the decisions they're making. They're an adult, they can make those decisions. So we often will do a lot of work on actually blessing children to make decisions we don't agree with.
Mm.
Because otherwise they'll make those decisions just to anger us. So it can be complicated. And also for a parent, you want to be able to, you want your child to know that they can reach out. You also don't want to become an ATM.
Yes. Right. Good point.
Because I was working with a mom who was like, "Oh, my son, he dropped out of college. He doesn't have a job, but his friends in college invited him to Myrtle Beach, but there's no direct flights from Myrtle Beach, from New York to Myrtle Beach. So she's like almost arranging like a private jet, and then she's like, I can pick you up from the airport. He's like, no, I don't want my friends to see me with you, so you need to rent me a car. I'm like, what are you, his travel agent? The message we're getting is you can use me and you're
Mm.
so desperate. So this is also something that's important. This is more of an advanced technique.
Mm-hmm.
You get to set your standard behavior, but that also means you get to walk away if you don't like that standard behavior that your kid is using with you. And what's the irony is that sometimes this is for adult children, not under 18. If you're being treated rudely by an adult child, by calmly and firmly saying, I'm done, I'm not going to participate in this anymore, they might come running back after you. But children, especially if they were raised by someone who, I don't like to diagnose very far, but what people refer to as narcissism, which now
Yeah.
everyone in the world is a narcissist.
Right.
Um, if they were raised like that, they might show up like that. They're going to show up like the alienator who raised them. And one thing is to be compassionate when they have an emotion, but we don't need to be compassionate when it's abusive behavior. And with
Mm.
a lot of moms, and for some reason with you, I work with dads too, but I'm coming back to the moms in my head today. I always ask, if they treated their wife like this, would I be okay with that? If the answer is no, you should not accept that behavior.
Wow. So this is probably hard for parents who have waited for some kind of reconnection and then the kid comes back and then there's the feeling like I'll do anything. This is what I've wanted for so long. That would make
Right.
people, I think, more likely to tolerate bad behavior.
And I'm going to guess that's what they did with their spouse.
Yeah.
If we keep these patterns going and just replace people, I've worked with parents who have been alienated by 3 different co-parents.
Mm-hmm.
Keep
Yeah.
marrying the same co-parent, and they keep marrying the same spouse, and their kids do the same behavior, and you're just changing names on a situation. So the parents who see this as a chance for radical growth, healing, and transformation will reunite in a healthy way. The ones who are just see this as tactical, as just like, well, how do I get this and how do I get them to respond? I always joke with people, I'm like, just offer them $10,000 to answer your text messages. I'm like, if you're that desperate, I'm like, just bribe them. Like, if that's all you're after, it's going to be cheap. It's going to be cheaper than the system. I'll tell you that much. you
Yeah,
know,
but again, that's that same. I would think that if you do that, that's a conditional relationship. That's basically what they're
yeah,
getting from the other parent anyway.
bingo. So this isn't what we want. But if we're just like, if when the focus is just how do I get a response? we're just going to get any response. The focus should be on how do I build this relationship and how do I show up as a parent that my child can have a true loving bond with.
And respect, I think, is baked into that.
Respect. Yeah, so important. Children will not reunite with a parent who they don't respect.
Mm,
Who,
wow. This is really helpful. I'm like taking tons and tons of notes, but I'm trying to still look at you. Okay.
yeah.
What about, like, what have you seen in your experience where is there anything in common that leads to that aha moment, like when kids do come back? Because we've seen stories too. We've seen success
Mhm.
stories too, but you have more experience with this in particular. What makes that happen, or is it just random?
A lot of times there's kind of two parents. One is someone that they respect, like a boyfriend, a girlfriend, but it can also be a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
who's good, knows what they're doing, might say something to have them question that.
Mm.
So I reunited with my dad when my spouse at the time, I hung up on my dad. He's like, "Why did you hang up on your dad?" And I was in like my 30s. And I said, "Well, dad abandoned mom and me." And he goes, "Well, you sound more like a divorced woman than a daughter." Right? And that
Interesting.
made me
Yeah.
rethink this. So for some people, I've heard stories of people saying they're dating someone. They said, "I don't want to date someone who isn't your dad. I'm not going to get into a long-term relationship with someone who has blocked their family." You at least have to see what's going on, right? So that could be one thing. And then the other big thing is that the other parent does something that the child can't respond to. And it can be as extreme as kicking them out of the family home, not responding to something. It is rare. I don't want to say it's never happened, but I have heard of a lot of cases of I watched a YouTube video on alienation. That was me. I don't want to say that that hasn't happened, but often I've heard stories of my friend had a baby and I hugged the baby and it all clicked for me, stuff like that. The most important thing a parent can do is be ready when the kid reaches out,
Mm-hmm.
be ready for chance encounters, and be so ready that the moment they see you, they see that you're different from what they've been told. You might have a few seconds. Um, but, and it can also be from other family members too. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the trick. We can't force other family members to give messages because then the kid feels attacked.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. You know, as you're saying, like some examples, I'm thinking about a really close friend of mine whose two daughters, two sisters, were alienated from her for 8 years and came back as young adults. One of them, it was that she got a tattoo and suddenly wondered, what would my mom think of this? Because the dad got really, really angry at her.
Oh,
And the other
wow.
one, the dad was threatening to commit suicide, and she um,
Oh,
figured, I'm tired. Like I just need like my mom after all this time. So, you know, something that seems really little and something much more major, but you never know.
right. So you have
So,
to be ready. And we talk about being ready. And I worked with a mom who, before she started to work with me, she told me that her daughter came and knocked on her door. And I said, "Oh, what did you do?" And she goes, "Well, I didn't open it."
she didn't open it. Why
Because she
not?
said her daughter came up upset and she didn't want to deal with that. I've worked with a lot of parents whose the kids will come over upset, angry, and the parent doesn't open the door.
Wow.
That's why it's so important to be ready. Because if you've been through an alienation or an estrangement, a high conflict situation, it's traumatizing. And this trauma leaves a scar. And as we know, basic psychology, when there's a stimulus that makes us feel unsafe, we run away, we fight, we freeze, we also fawn, right? And so these people have like a run away, so they don't open the door. Um, but that's also why I want to push back against this narrative of like, if you could just get me in the room with my kids, I'd figure it all out.
Hmm.
Like, would you, are you prepared to hold space, as the kids say, for someone who's going to show up very traumatized as well? Angry, sad? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. So because this is such a marathon, is there, I mean, you mentioned how it could, how you got someone reunited. That's, I'm thinking the first step in it was either hours or it's months. But we know it's a bumpy road. What do you say to people who have this fantasy of like, well, my kid comes back, it's going to be wonderful? Like, what are some of those common setbacks or things that are not part of that fantasy? Because I've seen it with my close friends' daughters as well.
Yeah. So, well, it's very common. And the more we can imagine this is a wave, that there's going to be highs and lows, and we ride the wave, the better. But all relationships have highs and lows.
Mm-hmm.
So that's normal and that's healthy. That there's going to be times where they're closer, times where they pull back, times where they need you, times where they don't respond. Um, and then also for all the parents going through this, the more you can create a beautiful life that sustains you, the better. It's not your kid's job to heal you. So when a parent says, I'd be happy if I just got my kids back, I'm like, of course you'd be happier, and that's normal. That means you love them. It means you're not a psychopath, that you're sad that they're not there. So that's good. It means you're healthy. But that's so much of a burden. I'd be happy if I got my kids back. What kid wants that?
Yeah.
Much. Too much for a little kid. So I come from a background of family constellations, which is a method to heal deep family trauma, ancestral trauma. And one of the big things in constellations is there's a system and an order, and the child is the small person in the system, no matter how old they get. And literally their job is not to forgive their parents, not to heal their parents. And what we'll often do in these exercises is stuff like, this is too much for me, I'm too small, I give it back to you, this isn't mine. That's healthy. But when I see a child who says, because I also do work in family constellations with children, who says, and this actually came up a few weeks ago. I asked the daughter, she was there with her mom, she's like 19, what's your big dream or wish? And she like didn't even really understand the question. And she goes, for mom to be happy.
Mm.
Mom's been through so much. It's like, no, your dream is to travel the world or get into college or have a job or find a boyfriend. It's not to heal mom. And mom was allowing that, right? And that can become a meshman.
I was
So
just
it's
about
very
to say that.
important. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's very important for the, because it's easy to say, oh, my kid is enmeshed with the other parent. Are you emotionally enmeshed with your kid? I'm not saying you, I'm saying the people listening, right?
Yeah.
Are you emotionally enmeshed? Are you saying, I need my kid to be happy, I need my kid to heal? Because some kids might just be like, energetically, that's too much, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah. Oh my, it makes so much sense. It's fascinating. This is probably the first time I've heard it from this angle. So,
Mm.
so because, people have to really start working on themselves to be different when the kid is ready to come back, what advice do you give to parents if they're going to implement like one small thing each week or each day that they could do to start working on themselves? Because I mean, I'm sure you see it and we see it all the time too. People are
Yeah.
absolutely heartbroken. They are shocked that this is happening in the first place. They're terrified that it's going to stay this way forever, and they feel completely hopeless. And I feel like
Mm.
this interview right now, our conversation is so hopeful, but we know how people catastrophize, especially because our clients tend to be dealing with a legal system as well that's also making things worse. So for someone who feels completely hopeless and that it's impossible to heal or even consider being okay, forget happy, without their child in their life, like what could someone do? Like just little tiny steps.
So if someone is completely hopeless, that's completely understandable. I would say, look, surround yourself with successful people who've reunited. Too many people go on these very depressing communities. They do, they go down the rabbit hole of alienation. They read all these books. I say, are you an expert on alienation or expert on reuniting?
Mm.
But this is basic. If we want anything in life, we should surround ourselves with people who have accomplished this. So surround yourself with people who are healing, healed, and who are reuniting with their kids.
All right, perfect.
Number
So
one.
I was going to say, like, speaking of that, can you give me some of your success stories that you alluded to a couple before, but tell us
Sure.
some good stories.
So I worked with a mom. This is pretty recent, who hadn't spoken to her daughter in 12 years, had no contact. So no email, no address, no phone number. And when she came in, it was all about what the dad did.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, we looked at what her role was. So it's not about blame, but about responsibility. So the last time she saw her daughter, because of all that's going on, she was very upset, wrote a pretty hurtful letter to her daughter. But I could also see it was like, why don't you contact me? Oh, you don't contact me. Like, it was like hot, cold, cold.
Yeah, yeah.
We really worked with her to let that go, to heal, to relax, to heal her own relationships where there's alienation in her family.
Mm-hmm.
And the last day I worked with her, she said, Ginger, I don't know when, but I know I'm going to see my daughter. I'm okay. I'm done. And she was just so relaxed and so glowing. And then 2 months later, her daughter reached out and said to her, hey, mom, just so you know, I never blocked you. I just changed my email. I never let you know. Of course she did, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and but accepting that is important. Accepting that that's the daughter's narrative and we're not going to challenge that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they began to talk, and now they've had a visit. So that's one story that really resonates with me. Also, because when she started to work with me, she was very skeptical of everything.
I bet.
Um, so, uh, but just the moment, if you can get to that moment, you're like, I know everything's going to be okay and work out because I've done the work. I'm prepared. I know that whatever they throw at me, I got covered. I'm okay. Then it really is inevitable. So that one case really resonates with me, and that was 12 years no contact. And
And how old was her daughter?
I want to say 33,
Wow.
or well, okay, so just to make sure I get the math right, I could be wrong. The daughter stopped seeing her when she was 17, 12 years, 17 plus 12.
All right.
How old is
Late
that?
20s. Late 20s, but still
Late
not
20s,
a
yeah, late 20s,
young child. Yeah.
right. And she had moved to live near her dad and was living with the dad for most of the time.
Yeah.
So, but also when we do this work, a lot of parents will realize that they are alienating other people in their families, or there's relationships that they can heal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's a big one. I worked with another mom whose daughter showed up for Christmas, just knocked on her door, and they began to have a beautiful relationship. But she also said, I knew to be hopeful, I knew to expect it, and I was ready for it. So it's all about um, being ready. And I'm trying to think of another case because there's so many. There was a dad. Oh, this was interesting. So he had two adult sons, and both from different moms. So it was like very different relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And right away, so this happened like I think after we only had 2 sessions together, he sent a message out to them without talking to me about it.
Mm-hmm.
But the message instead was, you need to do this, was just like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on with your life? And they both responded. And that both created like a cascade that they were able to rebuild the relationship. Because before that, he was always like, I'm your dad and I deserve a response. And like, you should tell him. And like, all this fighting. And just like, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on with your life?
Mm-hmm.
And then they reached out to him and they kept reaching out to him and they kept rebuilding that. But with him, it wasn't that the message was correct. It was that when we were working together, I remember this one moment where he was like, there's all this conspiracy in the court system and this and that, and my
Oh
ex
yeah,
and
we get
this
a
and
lot of
how
that
the
too.
church.
Yeah.
And in one moment, he was just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm ready to try something else. He's like, I realize I can't change other people. And in those moments, then the things kind of can happen quickly and become inevitable. But for some parents, it's very quick to get to that moment. And for some parents, there's a lot of resistance. So kind of is depending on what messages are. And also for some parents, it can be admitting that they still have healing work to do. So I
Hmm.
also get a lot of parents like, I'm so healed. I've done all this therapy. I've done ayahuasca. I've done this. I've done this. And like, it's like, okay, well, part of being healing is knowing that you can always be improving.
Hmm.
And it's not to get a certificate of completion. It's a journey that we're always going deeper on and seeing what are those things that are still getting in our way, which could be that we've held on to anger that we don't want to admit about. So it's like if a kid's alienated and you're angry at their mom, why would they ever come back to you? Because their mom's angry at you.
Hmm.
Why would they change? What's in it for them? So the more that people can see the blocks that they're putting there that they can control, because that's in the end of the day, all we can control is our actions and our reactions.
I think a lot of what you said also touches on your own perspective
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that when your perspective shifts, like everything changes.
Right. Well, you said it before when you're looking for why this can't be helped, why there's no hope, and then you get on the internet and you see all these other parents saying it's been 20 years and I want to, unalive myself and like, oh, it's so awful and you know, then that's what you're going to come bring into your reality because that's what you're looking for. But when you look at the miracles around you, and I want to make this very clear, this isn't becoming a Pollyanna. This isn't being um, toxically positive. It isn't covering up crap with alienate with the affirmations. So you also said like you asked like about like what's the one step to do when things feels hopeless, and it's also like for if you can do this accompanied and not on your own, lean into the image of it's my funeral and my kids didn't show up. Leaning into
Mm.
yeah, this does suck and this is unfair. And instead of saying it'll be okay, but just being like it is what it is, that can be very powerful.
Mm.
Because I had a mom on a call who was like, "Oh, I can't see my daughter, adult daughter, very upset. What can can you give me something to make me feel better?" I was like, "I can't." I'm like, "There's no magic exercise we can do in a few minutes to make you
Hmm.
feel better." And but here's the irony: when she saw that, and we actually allowed her to cry it out at the end, she was like, "I feel so much better now." Whereas if you're like, "It's okay, it's okay, it's okay, I'm okay, you're okay, it's okay, everything's okay," we're just suppressing, and that's
Yeah.
not healthy. Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
let it out and you have to just say, yeah, this is awful.
Hmm. It's just validating the truth of it is what it is.
It's what
Yes,
it is.
that's one thing I like about you, Ginger, is you're also New Yorker, so that harsh New York reality check of like, okay,
Totally.
we're not gonna sugarcoat it. The thing that you just mentioned also with what you are paying attention to, especially on social media or in the news, we call it doom scrolling, and I feel the same way as you.
Yeah.
Of course, our content is a bit different, but we always tell people when I'm asked the question like, what can people do to do better in their own case in family court? Stop doom scrolling. Stop, because if you keep looking at this stuff, like all the bad news, which of course, you know, being a writer, we know that what bleeds is what leads. So a lot of that is what gets your attention, but it's not necessarily the majority of cases. The same thing with kids who have been turned against their one parent. We know that most of them come back, but it can feel like they're never going to come back because nobody's kids are coming back based on that doom scrolling. So it is so important
Totally.
to understand that there's a lot that you can do yourself that's in your control, and it's going to change things. I feel like when people with the family court stuff, when they're reading these terrible stories, they start convincing themselves that they're going to lose because they don't have as much money as their ex, or the judge is corrupt, or there's bias. But you are going to lose. You are going to lose if that's in your head, because again, it's that learned helplessness and that sense of victimhood. Like that's what you're putting out, it's going to happen. So instead, think about surrounding yourself with the victories and the success stories. Not that everything is a success, but even we like to focus on progress. So not everything is a huge victory, but progress also has to be noted. And I imagine that's
Mhm.
similar to what you do. Like when, a kid comes to the house or at least reaches out, that's something, or
Right.
answers a text, or views a text.
Those are all victories that we can build upon, and building upon progress and small victories is easier and it's more trackable than saying I need this one big success and one big victory. And for some parents it's actually asking the hard question, like, am I the parent that I want for my kids?
Mm.
You might have to spend some time cleaning up stuff that might not be your fault. Maybe it's you're drinking too much. Why? Because you're stressed. Why? Because you can't see your kids. Why? Because of the court case. Why? But all those things impact the perception they have of you. But the good news is you can do that. That is something under your control.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Ginger, so how can people find you? Tell us about what you're doing now and how people
Sure.
can get a hold of you.
So people can follow us on Instagram at Erasing Family. It's the name of the documentary, and on YouTube, Erasing Family as well. You can watch the whole documentary for free on YouTube and share it with whoever you want. And if people want to reach out to me and my team, they can go to reversingparentalalienation.com. We do not coach over email. So we are there to help, and we also provide a lot of free content and webinars. But one thing that I've learned is whoever you want to work with, or if you want to work with multiple people, you need a support team and a support person. This is too much to go on your own, and too many friends don't understand this. So
Mm-hmm.
people say, "Well, I have a friend." I'm like,
I
have
know.
they gone through this? Are they capable of helping you? Because if someone just says, "Oh, why don't you just go talk to the judge?"
Don't you love the why don't
That's
you
not help.
just? No.
Why don't you? No. It's because this is a specialized problem, and you need people who are willing to be there for you and also to hold you accountable. So there's a lot of techniques out there that are super helpful, but if you don't use them, if you don't use them pretty much all the time, they're not going to work.
Yeah.
Like this is too difficult. Like you can't slide back into like old habits with this. It really has to be, okay, we're going to do these techniques, we're going to use these methods, we're going to change our side of the fence all the time.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I noticed with you, Ginger, because we just did something together for your community, is that you do have community. So it's not just a support team, right? It's a whole
No. Yeah.
community. That's so important. We
So
have that too.
yeah, so the people who work with us, we have a community where we're celebrating wins, where we're holding each other accountable. And also, one thing in my community is that we don't let parents coach each other. Only coaches coach the parents. So you're getting advice from people who have reunited themselves, or are using these methods in their entire life. And community that's positive and inspiring is important. But
Yeah.
also a community that's negative, and that's a lot of what I see online right now, can also be a detriment. So choose your
Same,
community
same.
wisely. Surround yourself with people you want to emulate.
Completely agree. Well, thank you so much, Ginger, for talking with us today. I have so much I can't wait to share with our community and our clients. And I know this is not going to be our last conversation.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone listening. And may you all reunite and heal your families soon.
Yes, thank you. All right,
Thank
take
you.
care.
Bye.
Bye.